I love that you were talking about your relationship or Viren's relationship with Soren, but I kind of want to hear about your relationship with Jesse and Okaya. So, can you kind of talk about your chemistry this season compared to the previous seasons of The Dragon Prince?
Yeah. Yeah. It does make me emotional.
What's going on, you guys? James here with another real interview, and today I am so excited to finally bring you my interview with actor Jason Simpson. You might know him as the voice of Viren in The Dragon Prince, and let me tell you, this interview is full of laughs, smiles, and yeah, we cry together. And I think it's such a vulnerable moment when Jason Simpson peels back the curtain on season 6 of The Dragon Prince, lets you know about the character of Viren like you've never known him before. But before we get into this, guys, of course, spoilers are ahead. So whether you've watched it or not, at this point, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that like button, and get loud in the comments below. Let me know, what was your favorite part of this interview? And okay, if you haven't watched season 6 yet, save this to your watch later list and come back, because this is my best interview of my career so far, and I'm so glad that you all get to see it. So let's get into it. What's going on, you guys? James here, and today I'm so excited to bring on a legendary voice actor, someone who I've admired in their work for so many years. As a big fan of The Dragon Prince, I have Mr. Jason Simpson, the voice of Viren himself, in the room with us. So Jason, thank you so much for hopping on the channel and chatting with me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here. It's been too long, but I'm glad that we're able to connect now, now that season 6 is out. So lots of stuff to talk about.
No, absolutely. And for the fans who might not really know much about you, of course, they know your voice, but they might not know who Jason Simpson is. Can you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about you before we get into these questions?
Sure. Yeah. First things first. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I've got a 16-year-old and a 19-year-old. Those are crazy dynamics. I remember when my kids were, 3 and 6.
Wow.
Time flies. I'm from a little prairie town in southern Alberta, which is one of the provinces in Canada. A town of about 2,000 people, and this is a story I told lots. So for people who've heard it, sorry. I heard Optimus Prime when I was 9, almost 10.
Unless a new supply of energy is found, nobody is going to win this war.
And I knew that's what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a talking car and a voice actor. I wanted to be an actor. So I pursued that for the rest of my life. And here I am. I can't do anything else in life.
That's amazing. I mean, you've been in the business for how long now? It's got to be like, what, 15, 20 years maybe?
25 years.
25 years. And I mean, it's funny how like you've been in the industry for so long, yet this is probably going to be some of your best work yet. So I love that, like, you're just a model of consistency, it feels like.
Well, I appreciate that. I think, I do on camera and voice work. More voice because I can be so many things when it comes to voice. On camera, I'm, a very large 6'4" bald guy with a beard, and you can't really hide that guy behind too many characters, but I take whatever I can get. But I think you're right, 100% without question. The work that I've done with Viren has been my most fulfilling and most challenging, and at the same time, the easiest, because wow. I just sort of approach him as a real person with real feelings and ambitions. Certainly ambitions I don't have, but that's the acting, that's the make-believe, and you just have to find the truth in that, and it just kind of comes to you.
Yeah.
I'm speaking of myself, of course. I found it to be the easiest work I've done, but also at the same time challenging, because there's some heavy topics that we touch on for sure.
Yeah, and actually this is a perfect transition to the very first question I have for you. If anything, it's more of a prompt, because you talking about how this was your easiest role. I feel like there's been such an evolution of the character of Viren from seasons 1 to season 6. So can you kind of speak to the evolution of the character and what it's taken out of you, of course, to then inject so much emotion and life from season 1 all the way to now season 6?
Yeah. He's changed, of course, in the writing, and I've had a couple different stances, and that's changed over the years. You know, I kind of sort of approached him as he's misunderstood. He just wants to do what he wants to do for his family. He's got kids and he loves them. And not to say that I had blinders on. I knew what he was doing, but I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt sometimes. And then season 3 rolled around and I went, no, I've got to approach this a different way and grow with him. Because I can't judge the character. As soon as I judge the character, it's just false and it's shallow. So I still have to make those same commitments to him, but I've got to find where he's coming from, so it's not the same thing over and over and over. So the challenge was to find, well, I think that's where I said it was easy. I love playing questionable. I love playing people who make really bad decisions, because it's a not a relief, but I don't get to do that in real life. I don't want to do that in real life, but you tell your children to go kill someone, or you gaslight your children. You show them, you don't show them the love that they deserve. It sounds weird, but it's fun to play that dynamic, knowing that I'm not that in real life. I'm the complete opposite of that. So it's fun to let that go, to play with that. And it feels a little gross sometimes. You finish a record and you kind of have to shake it off and go, there are people who really think that way. But it's fun to play those people. So it's been a challenge in finding how to play this guy honestly throughout those 6 seasons. Maybe not as easy, and I don't know if it was as convincing from one season to the next, but I certainly had a lot of fun trying to figure it out and taking that journey with him.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think it's amazing that you do recognize that, because just from 2 or 3 minutes of me speaking with you, I know that you are not that character, right? You have a heart that is as tall and as big as you are. So it's like, it's amazing to hear that. So I almost wonder now, do you feel like this was always the intention with the character of Viren, that by the end of season 6, most fans would come to understand that maybe he was misunderstood, he made questionable decisions, complex, but listen, this is who he is. He's a family man at the end of the day. So was it always that, I guess, was the goal to make him lovable and likable?
No, I don't think it ever was a goal to make him lovable and likable. It was the goal to show that he's a human being. And when you're dealing with a property that has dragons and fairies and creatures and all that stuff, it's important to latch on to the humanity of the character so that you keep them grounded, you keep them real in a fantastical world. And not everyone's likable, and there are a lot of people who are detestable. They have hard hearts, and they are not. They're not going to be changed. Some people are. So my goal was never to make everyone love him. You kind of want that sometimes, but I liked when people hated him. That told me that I was doing my job. But I did want people to see that he was still human, and there might be something in there that is redeemable. I don't think I ever really wanted people to redeem him, because I didn't really care about that. I didn't care about his actual redemption. I cared about his journey to that point, trying to maybe find it or rail against it. So where it went in the story, I had no idea. Starting in season 1, I had no idea where it was going. But I did know through certain meetings and conversations with Aaron and Justin that he was going to go a certain way. And I looked forward to getting those scripts and playing really deep, dark moments for this guy. Because there's nothing like anything I ever get to work on. And that's no slight on any of the fun cartoons that I do. That's what they are. They're fun, and they can be challenging, but this was like tapping into some really dark horrible stuff that no one ever wants to go through or meet anyone that goes through that. But there are people like that, so it's not unbelievable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't want him to be loved. I just wanted to truthfully tell his story and get him to where he needed to go, wherever that may be.
Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful response to it. I mean, I'm sure you've already seen online people are coming around on Viren. Now they're like, wait a second. In retrospect, he was nice, wasn't he? I'm like, hold on, wait. Season 3.
Yeah, those arguments are very divided, right? I mean, you've seen it. There's some people who don't like the outcome. They don't think he deserved that. Some people think he deserved better. Personally, I love reading all that. I love hearing all those opinions. I have an opinion because I'm a fan. I've lived with this guy for 7 years, intimately. He's been in my head, in my heart. And I haven't had 3 days to grieve what happened with him. I've had almost 2 years of grieving. So to hear people's opinions, it doesn't hurt. I just want to share. I've wanted that platform. I've wanted to talk about it because I mean, I'm going off topic here a little bit, but you know, when I first read the script, my wife came into my office and she said, "What's going on? What's wrong?" And I was bawling. I couldn't even talk to her. I was heaving tears. I was so sad. It just felt like a really great loss to me. And it is. It really is. So as a big fan of the character, I also have such a strong connection to him, and it's just really is a great loss. So it is difficult to read certain things, but I also want to respect everyone's opinions so much because they see it so differently than I do. My opinion is no more important than anyone else's. And everyone's got a valid take because we all see it a different way. So I'm not sure if I answered the question. I know I went off track there. My apologies.
No, that was perfect because I kind of want to stay in this pocket, right? Because speaking to that emotion that you were expressing, you were crying and you're grieving over this character. I know that this season is the most emotional performance that you've given as Viren, and it makes sense because yes, he's on his way to his deathbed, but not before he can, of course, sacrifice his life to save his family and to save his loved ones. So where did you draw that inspiration when recording your lines? Was there a specific memory you had, or maybe something like source material that you just kept going back to?
No, I just, like everybody, I'm familiar with pain. I'm familiar with emotions, being hurt and stepped on and wrecked. I'm familiar with having a heavy heart and aching. I'm familiar with wanting my children to be safe, and that physical pain you can feel as your chest tightens, worrying about your kids. And some people I know some people will argue with me over this. But you know, approaching it, that was what Viren wanted. I'm not saying he wanted to go out and die that way, but he wanted to do that one last thing so his son could see that he was doing a selfless act. You know, people are saying he was abused into it, he was bullied into it. No, I don't see that at all. His son set the example for him and said, "Take my life, take my heart, help these people." And that was a turning point for him. I'm going to do what my son just showed me I could do, and this is a good way to set somewhat of the record straight.
Yeah.
Doing whatever he can. He knows it's going to be difficult to be forgiven, find redemption. It may be impossible, and it doesn't matter as long as his son sees that he could do this little thing. So tapping into that was easy. It really was easy because I just needed to find something in me that knew about loss and not wanting to let go of something before that, or a person before they knew how important they were to me, and that I don't want to lose them. It's that kind of stuff. People have different methods, of course, but it was pretty easy to get into those shoes. You know, you don't have to live that life to approach that kind of scene honestly. It's just really about the emotion and connection to other humans that you love.
Gosh, I love that answer, Jason, seriously, because I'm a softie at heart, so it's easy for me to tap into places of where I felt sadness and grief and pain and angst. So I love that you were talking about your relationship, or Viren's relationship with Soren, but I kind of want to hear about your relationship with Jesse and Okaya, because the way that you both work together, you know, it's been great, but I feel like the roles were reversed a bit, right? Because Soren was always operating kind of at a loss since season 3, but in season 6 he was operating from a place of power, like, no dad, you're gonna listen to me, like, you're the one behind bars. So can you kind of talk about your chemistry this season compared to the previous seasons of the Dragon Prince?
Yeah. Jesse and I have had a very strong connection in the booth. You know, being close to each other, standing physically close to each other, and any of those scenes from season 1 to 3, we were always right there beside each other. So if there was tension in the script, we could see that on each other's faces, and that we played off of that. Literally, we could reach out and touch each other, and that was awesome. So we could make eye contact. 4, 5, and 6, COVID hit, and we were recording things separately. And I do believe we got to do some Zoom sessions for 8, I think. I think it was a Zoom session. But there were certainly sessions where we were just recording stuff solo. My terrible memory, trying to remember that. But Jesse, to his great credit, did not hold back. He embraced that change in Soren, that newfound strength. You know, Soren's always heralded as a strong character, but this was strength when he absolutely needed it. And it was not muscles, right? It was this fortitude where he could stand up to his dad and tell him, you need to do this, and take my heart to do it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I know, it's a lot, I know.
Yeah. It does make me emotional, because it's just such a real, like, you know, having those heart-to-hearts with my own children. It's nothing that high stakes, of course. But in the end, it is, because I want to raise my kids right and teach them things that they'll remember when I'm gone. So it is a little high stakes for me. I want them to do the right thing, have integrity, be honest, and do those things. And to see, Jesse come in with that performance, and Viren is back on his heels. Like, I've not seen this. That kicks him into gear. It encourages him, or it tells him, I've got to do this thing. I'm going to show my son I can do that for him. No matter what else happens, he may not forgive me, but he's going to see this moment that's positive in a dark, negative moment. So Jesse bowled me over with that.
For as strong as your performance was, I said it in my review, it's the best performance of this season. I feel like Jesse's performance as Soren was the best he's done as Soren too. So it's so funny how, like, father and son, best performances in a season that was so, I would say, like, dark and full of a lot of twists and turns, like in episode 8, because I do want to dive into episode 8 too. You know, I know this was your final episode as Viren, but did it end up being your favorite episode as a result of it being your final episode? Or do you feel like, you know, this is emotional, but it's not your favorite, like it's not what you would consider your favorite episode to date? Because it is my favorite, but I don't know where your thoughts are on episode 8 too.
I don't know if I have a favorite. I certainly enjoyed the freedom that the script gave me. I enjoyed the words that our brilliant writers honored me with to perform. It's great to get emotional. I love getting emotional. So, going back to season 2, the moment when, and I've told this story lots too, but when Viren's talking to the mirror and he just starts yelling at himself, telling the mirror that it's worthless. He's talking to the mirror, but he's talking to himself.
Nothing. Oh, you're powerless. Useless.
That was probably the most emotional I've ever been in the studio for this show. Because as soon as I started yelling, and I just, thought of myself in front of a mirror, like I've done many times, just degrading myself, going, you look terrible. You're stupid. We say stupid things to ourselves, and lower our self-esteem and just feed off that. And that just really poured over me in that moment. So when we cut that take, I stepped back and I was in tears. And everyone in the studio was like, I think we need to give him a second. And I was like, wow, I don't know where that came from, but it was amazing. So these moments in season 6, these had more purpose in that Viren doing what he could, saying what he could to just get his son to hear him. Not to forgive him, not to find redemption, but to just make a connection with his son finally, and to let him say that he was sorry and he wanted to fix that. And there's a purpose there, and we don't always get that chance. Like when you're having an argument with someone and they just storm out, and you're left there, not being able to say that thing you wanted to say to them. And what if they go away forever, and you never get to say that thing? And that's heartbreaking. There's a panic to that, and I could feel that as we were pushing through this, but I had to temper it a bit because, Viren's he's laid back a little bit, and he would say his son's name, and I just wanted to scream it all. But, you can't do that, of course. That's just me. That's not where Viren was at in the moment. So that was that's where some of the challenge was. And it was a lot of fun to play that afterwards. It's very rewarding, but to not put Jason into that moment and keep it as Viren, that was the challenge. And I think it worked, if I recall. So was that to answer the question?
You really did. And honestly, you helped me think of another question on the spot too, because as you're reading this script, right, because I know it's tough to really like separate your own emotions from what it is you're reading sometimes, but was this always the plan, right, for Viren to eventually die? Or do you feel it changed and maybe it was a bit of a surprise as you guys were like sitting down and talking about season 6? Or, was it always something you expected? So, all right, let me mentally prepare myself for that.
I think there was whispers of it at first. Going back to season 3, the end of season 3, Aaron had sent me an email saying, "What do you think of that finale?" And I hadn't read it yet. And I was in my car and I read that, and it says that he plummets off the tower and he dies. And I just, all the air went out of my lungs. I couldn't breathe. I was crying. And Aaron got back to me. He said, "Did you read it?" I'm like, oh, "This is terrible, man. I mean, but I'm going to, this is for the story. I get it. And I'm, willing to do what it takes to tell the story right." And he goes, "You didn't read it till the end, did you?" And I didn't. I didn't finish the script. And then I got to the end and it says, years later, he wakens from his death. So I knew somewhere down the line that was probably going to happen again, but I didn't know for quite some time.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. I'm trying to remember when it was that I found out. I think I knew a little while before I got the actual scripts, but when I got the scripts, it just hit it home, and it was really hard. I haven't watched season 6 yet. I've watched a couple little clips, and then I couldn't do it. I just started bawling, sitting in my living room by myself on Friday at 12:15 in the morning, and I just started watching, and I knew I couldn't go on because I couldn't see the TV. My eyes were just full of tears. I'm like, nope, can't do it.
Wow. I'll be honest with you. It's so funny, like you saying you haven't watched season 6 yet. And at the time of us recording this interview, my episode 8 reaction just dropped. And you should see the outpouring of love for what it is you did with Viren, and like just the way that it affected everybody. There are people that said, "Oh man, Viren, I hated him until this episode and he made me cry." And they were questioning themselves, like, why am I crying for somebody who was such a villain for so long? And I saw what you did bled through to the final product. So for as much as you're crying, I mean, listen, we're all there with you. I had moments where my jaw was on the ground. And it's funny because what you did with the role, as much as it is about Viren, right? You were still allowing others to play in the sandbox too. Like you paved the way for that, because I think you had, what was it, episode 1, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, right at the beginning, where you have that scene with Raquel Belmonte, and Claudia is emotional. She's like a mixture of angry and sad. She's like, "You can't leave. I saved your life. You have to stay. Please don't go." So were you feeling that emotion just as much as she was to even begin the season?
Oh, 100%, because it again, it goes back to that feeling of how do I approach this so I do not harm my child. How do I do this thing so that my child is not hurt in any way? But there has to be some sort of hurt because I've got to go do this thing, whatever it is. And again, in my own life, nothing that grand, nothing that dangerous, that elevated. But to see a loved one go when you don't want them to go is painful, painful. And Raquel, she is a powerhouse. I mean, well, it's, just in a league of her own. Her performances, it's immaculate and it's massive and it's still so nuanced and it's just beautiful. So to see that performance, hear her do that, it's like, how do you go? How do you leave after that kind of thing? So yeah, that certainly was a great start to the season because it's just emotionally so much at stake, and then it just plays through, and that's what drives those two throughout the season.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, do you have a favorite? I guess it's even tough to ask this question, but like, I know that's a great memory that you have, but do you have like a favorite memory during the process of recording and, getting through production with season 6? I can only imagine you have a lot, but I mean, you've already talked about your chemistry with Jesse, now with Raquel, but is there a favorite memory, maybe one that inspired you to kind of get into another gear or something that really just sticks with you?
For season 6 only?
Yeah, or actually, you know what, Jason? Is it easier if you want to do the whole series? You could do the whole series if you want.
That's okay. I'm trying to remember. It was a while ago, and if I'm being honest, I pushed. I shouldn't say I pushed those memories away. I don't do that. I just didn't. I wasn't holding on to them because it was just sort of painful for some of those. Going, I'm not going to do this again with this person. And you got to move past that at some point, and I will. I'm just a really stupidly emotional person who, cries at commercials and movie trailers, and so I cry at the drop of a hat, as you've witnessed. So to think on those things for too long, I just get so emotional, and but trying to think of, really honestly, I think the best experience was getting into the booth and seeing the Zoom come up, and that person I'm working with is in another studio and we're working together that way, as opposed to just going solo. Solo's fine. My whole video game career is just solo work. You just go in the booth by yourself and it's a solitary thing. And in the States they record solitary as well, quite a bit. So it's not foreign to me. It's common at ADR as well. But in this, we're so used to 3 seasons of everybody in the room looking at each other, hugging, you can reach out and touch somebody. And now we're at this critical phase where emotions are very high and there's so much at stake for the characters. And I'm talking to a television screen with my friend's face on Zoom. That's better than nothing. And in those moments, that was what we needed to just have that connection.
Love that.
Hope that makes sense.
It makes a ton of sense. I mean, that's how I feel. So I go to church often down here in Miami, and we did church online during the pandemic, and it's great, but you're in a room by yourself. So when you're in a room with people, or even a virtual room with people, and you can see them, it feels much better. Like you do feel like you're doing community together. So for you, I can only imagine it just inspires you to just give a little bit more when you're with somebody virtually or in person.
Because church is about community.
Exactly.
Church is the body, and you want to, and I think at the beginning of the pandemic, it was like everyone was just live streaming, and then you can finally go to places, and it's the exact same thing. You go to commune with people, and all of a sudden you can't do that. So we found the way to make it work, and it worked. It worked fine. We're all professionals. We could make that work, and there's no difference. It's just you don't have that community feel, unfortunately.
Exactly.
You made it work.
Exactly, and I'm glad you guys did. And I know earlier, so I do want to maybe get to another episode, because I know episode 8, everyone's going to talk about it, but episode 6, I hope it doesn't go overlooked. I believe that's Moment of Truth. Episode 6 is where you get Viren's backstory, like him writing, and then you see the animations with Lissa, young Soren, Kapar, you know, those flashbacks. So I almost want to know from your perspective, was it cool learning more about Viren's backstory, or was this always known to you and you were just waiting for it to finally hit the screen?
It was one of the biggest heartaches I've had of this show. Seeing him sit down and contemplate and write this letter out that would never get seen. I had no idea that was the case until I got to the end of the script. Oh. And I'm sure I did a very loud, audible, "No!" And I read it over again just to make sure I was reading it correctly. And because I was, you know, I don't know, maybe other actors don't do this, but as I'm reading it, I try and immerse myself in it. But part of me is going, okay, approach it this way. You're going to approach this scene this way. You're going to do this way. You know, and you're in it, but you're thinking of the technical, the acting, the nuances. How am I going to approach this moment? And I got to that and I went, well, that is all for the audience. It's all for himself, this catharsis. And I know that seems weird to say it's all for the audience. The whole show's for the audience. But in that moment, that's the only people who will enjoy that is the audience, because the intended receiver is not going to get it. You know, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's so great, it's so sweet. This is interesting aspect and into the, you know, look into this guy's life." And no one on screen's ever going to know that, except for Viren. It goes with him. So does he? I can't remember. Does he burn it?
Yeah, he burns the letter at the end, and I think I shouted no for you. I'm like, no. Why would you waste time writing this out and then burning it? It's just, and I almost wonder, do you think we're gonna get more of Lissa or maybe more backstory with Viren and the family? Because I kind of would love that in the final season, to be honest with you.
Well, I could probably shed some light on that, but there's certainly things I'm not allowed to talk about.
Of course,
for the next season. To answer your previous question, though, I loved getting the backstory. I love hearing that stuff because you're always looking for something where this character came from, what inspired them, what helped them grow, and what makes them who they are. So reading a bunch of that was really touching because it's been speculation for 5 seasons and a million questions online. Who's their mom? Who's his wife? What happened to her? Does she look like this? And where did he come from? And Kapar and all of that. So it was nice to have. It's funny to say it's closure when we're just discovering it, but there is closure there to certain questions. So yeah, I really quite enjoyed that. I think it's quite nice. I wish that it had gotten out. I wish that the letter had gone to Soren. It'd be a different story, of course, but it's just, here's a screw that we're putting in you, and now we're going to turn it. You know, finally, there's something. Oh, nope, just another painful moment that's growing from this moment of truth and joy and release, and then it doesn't go anywhere. But it helps the character.
No, it surely does. It's almost funny. I feel like, in retrospect, if Soren did get that letter, do you almost feel like not only would it change his personality, but he would be just as angry as Viren, have that same vengeful heart, like, Dad, how could you? I'm upset. Instead, it felt like they ended without saying many words, but there was this acceptance in a way before Viren died. Do you think getting the letter would have changed the character, his personality completely?
Well, that's a good question. My thought was originally, if he had given that to Soren, that would have changed Soren's drive, his focus, and he might have become angrier for the wrong reasons, and it might have changed him as a person. And not to say that Viren had that forethought, you know, I don't want to put my son through that, but he didn't send it to him for a reason, and there was some thinking there, and I get it. Yeah, it's a good question, and it leads me to think, you know, in episode 8, what didn't we hear before we see Viren stumbling out of the dark onto the bridge there? what didn't he say? What didn't we hear him say to Soren and vice versa? Wow. We'll never know. I have that moment in my head, and Jesse might have it in his head, but it is a shame. It is a shame we didn't get to see that. It's nice to have that surprise, because that was a shock for many people. A lot of people went, "Oh, I knew that was happening." And that's fine. But to have some sort of moment between those two, just for some sort of a little more closure, especially for Soren, that would have been nice. But that's storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, Jason. So I almost like speaking to episode 6, before we go off of this topic and get to another one. It's not only Lissa that we see. It's not only Kapar, young Soren. We also see young Harrow before he's king. So when he's like crushing on, soon to be wife, and it's like he's having this conversation on the bench with Viren. So I never thought we would get Harrow and Viren speaking together at all in any capacity, let alone a brand new flashback. So can you kind of talk through that and how it was to work with his name escapes me, Viren's voice actor. Luke is just one of the absolute best performers that I've heard. So how was it for you getting back and recording more with him?
Going back to season 1 really quickly, I met Luke at our read through of the first episode. We all met at a hotel in a conference room and read and just got to know each other. And we really got to know each other on the day of our record. We didn't have very many big conversations. It was just me here, and he was across the studio, 12 feet away, looking over his music stand at me. And it was this instant friendship between us, which made the conversation between our two characters the easiest thing in the world. And going back to season 6, Luke and I were in the same building. I was in Studio A, he was in Studio B, and we were both on Zoom recording, and it was like no time had passed, like nothing had happened, and it was the easiest conversation we had. That was right there on the page. It was scripted, of course, but it just felt so comfortable. It just felt like home, right? Working with him, because he's so good at what he does, and he connects with you as an actor. Like, we made eye contact, and that was it. I wasn't going to look away. He wasn't going to look away, and we realized, yeah, this is where we belong. And it's just that way every time we've recorded together. So to work with him again was, just my heart skips a little bit whenever I would read a script and see Harrow and Viren in the same scene. I was like, yes, I get to work again. That's so great. So that's been a great joy of mine throughout these seasons, is just those moments I get to work with Luke.
I love that. Do you think, and maybe this is me asking you to recount a memory from years ago, but were there more plans for young Viren, young Harrow in season 6? Because honestly, this was a joy for me too as a fan. So I wasn't sure if this was the only scene planned, or maybe there was another one and it just didn't make the cut,
I don't have the answer to that. That'd be a writer's thing.
Okay.
That's a great question, though. And I would love, I'm an actor. I want to work all the time. But I would love to tell the story of those guys when they were younger. And we joke about it, like Harrow and Viren, the college days. But honestly, Viren as an up-and-coming mage, and his best friend is the prince who becomes the king. And how did those two get connected, and how do they become friends? These two guys who are as different as they are. We just jump into their friendship, and it's tumultuous a little bit in season 1. There's, how did they become who they were? I would love to see that. Give us one season of that.
Yes.
I would love that, just to explore that, because we can both play. I've played young Viren last season, so I'll do it again.
Yeah, I would love it too. I'm sure like the thousands of people that will watch this would love it too. So it's funny that we're talking about season 1, because I had this question driving home today from work, and if you'll indulge me just for 2 seconds. So in season 1, we see Viren, right, looking at this mysterious mirror that we eventually learn is Avazandum's looking glass, and he's studying these cryptic runic symbols, trying to decipher it. But I find it hard to believe that Viren didn't also look into the mirror and take a deep, hard look at who he is and ask, like, who is this man in the mirror right now? So for you, from season 1, when you looked at yourself in the mirror and said, hey, I just got cast as Viren, let's get ready, all the way to season 6, when you got prepped for your final line, which was, I am a servant. How did that man in the mirror change for yourself?
That's a great question. You know, every time there's a small town here called Cloverdale, and there's an ice arena there. And I took my kids there for lacrosse back in 2017. And I remember sitting in the parking lot of that ice arena, getting the call from my agent that I'd booked this show. And every time I drive past that, it's once or twice a week, I'd look at that spot and I go, that's where I got that fantastic news. And that changed me, certainly. It's a job, but it's been we had no clue where it was going. We had no idea where the characters were going to go. My audition for Viren was so different than who he ended up being in season 1, episode 1 to now. So looking in the mirror, that's a very good question. It all has to do with being a father. And I've said that over and over and over, and it's probably a tired answer for many people, but it really has been me looking at myself and looking at examples that Viren sets as a dad, as a very failed father. And I have, in real life, where it really matters, I have those failures all the time, every day. And I want to do better for my kids, but my own humanity gets in the way. And I have to look at the next moment where I can make it better, or we sleep on it and it's the next day. So seeing his arc as he finally comes around to realizing he's been very selfish only, he's had blinders on, and he's done horrible, terrible things, and there's no redemption. I can look at counter with my own life saying, I've just made mistakes as a human, and there is redemption, there is forgiveness. My kids love me and they're gonna forgive me. And we just need to grow together. I really wish, I don't think it would tell as good a story, but I really wish Viren had that with his kids. But that's a different story altogether. We wouldn't have the story we do now if that was the case. There's so many people out there who love this show who wanted that for them, but it would have been such a different story. That conflict wouldn't be there. It's just not the happy ending that everybody wants necessarily, but that's life and that's storytelling. So in my own reflection, I see those same moments of just failure, but I have the luxury of having real life and a connection with my children, and we can grow through those things. That Viren separated himself from his kids so what's the word I'm looking for? So hard. Mm-hmm. So truly, just this true separation that there's almost no going back.
No, I love that answer. And I appreciate you being so vulnerable and opening up about how much you do love your kids, because if I'm not mistaken, right, your daughter Ridley voiced Leola, and that was such an excellent reveal from you on Twitter, because I didn't catch it the first time because I was trying to not get so emotional in the end credits. I missed some of the sketches, and I gotta admit, like, I don't know if this is her first time or this is her second or third time, but I gotta give her kudos. She did such an excellent job portraying a character who you genuinely feel for, because you know that they're being separated from their parent. So for you, from the outside looking in and watching her record her lines, her getting in the process, how was it for you as a father seeing your daughter record those lines?
Well, it started with Erin asking if she wanted to do that. And I looked at it and I looked at the lines and I'm like, oh boy, there's some heavy duty trauma here. And she had not done voice work. This was her first gig. She'd been on camera quite a few times, but this is totally different. And I thought, I'm going to ask her. I'm going to try and walk her through. And I said, this is the dialogue, and it requires some heavy lifting. There's deep breathing, there's screaming, there's sobbing, there's like questioning. And she's like, I don't really want to do that. So I, sent a message back to Erin and said, I don't think she's ready for it. And Aaron was so kind and so generous with his time. He just said, just if you can, just get her to do a little something. Just ask her if she wants just to do something just small on your phone, just something. So we get it just to see what it sounds like for the character. And I was like, sweetheart, you got to do this. You're going to be totally fine. I'm going to be there with you. We're in my booth in my house here. And I just sort of walked her through each line. We talked about, connection with emotion and what are you connecting this word to? And, can you feel do you feel a sense of loss? I mean, it's just acting, but how do we connect to it? And then she became a totally different person. She blew me out of the water in my booth. I'm like, record. Send it to Aaron, and Aaron's like, yeah, perfect. So then she booked it, and we went into the studio, and I'm sitting there. I'm like 3 feet away from her. I'm just, oh boy, what is going to happen here? And she was such a pro. Take after take, Aaron's like being very sensitive, and okay, now it's just a little more. Now it's a little more dangerous feeling, and now your dad's drifting away, and she's like, okay, and just upped her game, and I was shell shocked, and I wasn't surprised, but I was really, really proud. Just knocked it out of the park.
I think that's awesome because I can't even imagine how proud you are. So like one day when I become a father, of course, like I'm going to be so proud of my daughter or my son when they do something, let alone star in a show of this magnitude, So that's so cool, Jason. I love that. And I don't want to take up, oh, go ahead. No, you go.
No, I'm with you on that. I feel the exact same. My son is a voice actor, so he's got a couple different shows that he's been working on, and Lego Friends, what's the other one? Lego Dreams. He's got a whole bunch of shows that he's done since he was about 7. I pulled him into that, and he's really enjoyed it. So there just definitely is this pride of bringing my kids under my wing and just watching them sort of grow on their own through that. So anyway, go ahead.
That's so cool, Jason. No, it is. And I got to imagine, right? After all the emotional weight of this season, the last question you want someone to ask you is, can you give us your interpretation of Viren's final line of the series, or series for him? So his final line is, if I'm not mistaken, it is, I am a servant, right? Before everything. So what's your interpretation of that? Because I've had people say, oh, he's totally regretting everything he did in his life. But then I have other people saying he's reconciled with the fact that at the end of the day, he just wants to serve the people he loves. So where do you fall in that argument?
Yeah, I'm very much on the side, and this is where my performance came from, the side of absolute humility and servitude. We hear him say that in season 1, and that there is an earnestness to it. I am a servant. I'm going to serve my country, my kingdom, but behind that is that drive of, and I'm going to do that by taking power. I'm going to do that by using dark magic. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make that happen. And in this case, he does exactly what he needs to do to save people and to save his son. And he finally can reconcile with his original spirit of being a servant, doing good as a servant. It's interesting how people interpret that how they want, and of course that's totally fine. But that was a really nice moment for me because it was this sort of full circle kind of feeling. But it was 100% genuine in my mind. He could rest. There's finally peace for him, even though, don't get me wrong, there's a lot to repay. There's a lot to make up for. There's a lot of apologizing sounds so weak, but he's got a lot to atone for. And so he's, some might say he's getting off easy by dying, and that's certainly, sure, that's true. But he saved people, but he got to show his son that he was capable of doing something selfless, only thinking of other people, mainly, most importantly, his son. And I think it was a really lovely moment. So
Yeah. Do you remember who wrote that line? Because I gotta imagine whose ever idea that was, it's just genius.
I don't know who wrote that specifically. Devin and Ian wrote that script, I believe.
Oh, Devin. Devin always, I know. The emotion.
Devin and I have this great counterbalance of her through the years saying, Jason makes me cry when I read some of her dialogue, and she makes me cry when I read some of her dialogue. I'm always looking forward to crying or making people cry because just, emotions, truth and honesty kind of, when they're attached to emotions, it's powerful.
Of course. And I know we're coming up on the end of the hour here, so one question before I let you go. Now, Viren's...
Questions as you want. I'm open.
You, brother? I appreciate that. So, okay, Viren is dead. That's it. You don't have to voice him anymore, right? So, is this the end of your involvement, though, for the Dragon Prince as we head into what is technically the final season, if they don't get greenlit for 3 more, of course, but is this it for your involvement with the Dragon Prince?
Well, no one has said there's no Viren in season 7, and I'm not dropping some scoop or anything. Honestly, I can't recall what there is as far if there's flashbacks or anything. But I don't want to say no, he's done. No, he's done. He died. We all saw that, but I can't remember what. But I mean, there's Barrios, there's Terbium, there's some other little characters kind of things that we do throughout the season. So I don't want to sound cagey here, and I don't want to sound like I'm dropping hints because I'm not. I'm just trying to remember. I believe I've got some stuff coming up in season 7, but only because they were very gracious to let me voice a couple other characters. So, which I love. I love Barrios. I love Terbium. I wish we could have a Terbium and Shirt season. Those 2 are my favorite. So
if they don't come back in season 7, I'm gonna cry, bro. They're so good.
Yeah, just one more time. Yeah, that'd be great.
I know. Well, I know we're pretty much wrapped up here, Jason. I just want to say thank you so much for being gracious with your time, for being vulnerable with your answers. And I'm going to be honest, and I would say this publicly as well as privately with you. I've always respected you as an actor since I started watching The Dragon Prince, but today I've found a newfound respect for you as a man. So I appreciate the way that you lead your family, appreciate the father that you are. So yeah, try not to get emotional myself, but I just appreciate you so much. So thank you so much for all your hard work.
Yeah, I do. That does. That's very touching. I appreciate that. I've spent 7 years trying to make this character as truthful as I could with the writing that we've gotten, which has been just really beautiful. They've given us so many moments to connect with the core of who these people are, and it's really easy to wash over a lot of that stuff. So it's my goal and all of us as actors to connect with those little nuances, those little moments. So to hear that that comes out and you see that, that's really touching. So I appreciate that.
No, of course, Jason, and hopefully we'll bring you back on the channel for season 7, right, with Barrios. Yeah, please.
I think so. I don't recall exactly. Yeah. I think after my recording of episode 8, I was like, all right, I'm done. My emotions can't take it. And then I came in and did some other things, and it's all slipped my mind. But yeah, we'll see.
It's amazing. Well, thank you again, Jason. I really appreciate everything.
My pleasure. Thank you.